This is the Fearless Experience with Brendan P. Keegan. Conversations with leaders who provide valuable, candid insights from their journeys and share their secrets to what made them successful and fearless.
Today's fearless leader is John Gafford. He's a luxury real estate entrepreneur. He's an author. He is a speaker. He is a media personality. He's the ultimate professional. And he really helps people break free from going on autopilot and taking command of their potential. And as a matter of fact, you can read about it in his recent book, Escaping the Drift. And I want to read this tagline, how to make the world happen for you, not to you. So John, welcome to the Fearless Experience today.
Brendan, man, thanks for having me. Excited to be here today.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's actually start like right into your book in the core message. What does escaping the drift mean?
Well, I'll tell you a story of how it's both the title of my podcast and the book, but I'll tell you where it came from. So many moons ago, I was on a reality show. I was on The Apprentice, filming in New York, where you are right now.
Trust me, we're going to get to that.
I'll get that. But this story has nothing to do with really The Apprentice, but we were getting a task one day, and Mark Burnett, who was the executive producer of the show, was on set, and everything was going wrong. And just, you could just tell it was a bad day for production because Mark kind of led that with a little bit of an iron fist. And one of the contestants, Kristen Kirchner, yells across, we were in front of Trump International Hotel. She yells across at him, trying to just poke at Mark. And she goes, "Hey, treading water today, aren't you, Mark?" And he shoots her a look and he's like, "I never tread water. I swim. You drift along with the currents." And I was like, "Ooh, man, let me write that down." And I realized, maybe in that moment, I call it an epiphany, but I didn't find any great success in my life. I had a lot of cool jobs. I did a lot of really cool stuff in my early 20s, but I didn't find any great success until my early 30s. And the reason was I was leaving my life to the happenstance and the decisions of others. Everything that I had in my life was up to someone else. It was up to a boss to schedule me or move me to a new city. It was up to there was no decisions that I was making. I was drifting along with the currents of life, and nothing really changed until I took radical responsibility for my life, taking inspiration from the greatest Christmas movie ever, which is Die Hard. When they said, "No one is coming to save you," I took that to heart. Nobody's coming to save me, and I got to start doing this for myself. And I wrote the book as essentially a playbook to my dipstick 27-year-old self. If I could get in a time machine and go back and say, just do all of this and everything will work out.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, when you talk about kind of like living intentionally or proactively versus reactively. I have my next book, coming out in a few months. And there's a chapter in there that I talk about accidental lives and accidental careers. And, where people are put into a job because they're needed. And then they wake up 3 years later saying, when did I decide to become a procurement manager? When did I decide to become a project manager? Or when did I decide to work in this industry? Well, the company put you in that role because you fit, they needed you, you did a great job, but then somehow 6 months becomes 6 years. And then someone's like, whoa. So I actually talk about kind of living intentionally, but like you have to think about what you want, because it's the company's responsibility is to put you in the best role to get the greatest value. It's not to put you in the role you necessarily want to be in.
Well, that's a hallmark of somebody stuck in the drift, right? And the reason that happens is because they fail to establish a North Star within their own life to kind of navigate by. And if you don't have incredible clarity when it comes to your goals or what you're trying to do, how do you know if you're off course? You don't know until you literally hit a place where you're so far off course that you have that, whoa, why am I working in the electronics department at Walmart? Like I helped a lady with a shopping cart 3 years ago and now I'm here. What happened, right? And so I think a big part of my book as well is helping people establish that North Star, because as long as you have that guiding light, you'll know when you're off course. You need to feel when you're off course. And one of the things that Erwin McManus, who I love, said about this in my podcast was, he goes, "I love the concept of the drift because when you're drifting, you're still moving. Yes. Like you feel motion. You feel like you're making progress. You feel like you're going a direction, and you don't realize it's off course until a lot of cases for people, it's too late."
Well, it's interesting you say that. And I've actually had friends like when they've got laid off or they've lost their job or their company's downside, they've actually come back a year later and said, what a gift. I realized like I needed somebody to jolt me out of my drifting. So now I got to tell you, like just from 5 minutes in, I just can't even picture you as a drifter. So I'm still, I'm still trying to get there. So take me back to The Apprentice. Like I found that interesting. You talked about the moment when Mark Burnett said, I never tread water, I swim. Talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to me a little bit about, I think you said your 27-year-old dipstick. You, like walk me through your evolution and how The Apprentice and how, well, first of all, how'd you get on The Apprentice? Like just walk us there.
So how I got in The Apprentice was, it was a master class in risk evaluation. It was a master class in value proposition and risk evaluation, all tied into one. I'm actually, the keynote that I'm currently doing is really tied around that. So long story boring, my sister wanted to go try out for it. It was just after season 2 was on. I humored her by going with her. There's 2 million people tried out. We went to an open call. They kept calling us. And then I figured if I could just get to, they told us about finals week when it's the top 50. If I can just get to that, right, then I'll call it a success. So sure enough, they like, we want you to come to LA for finals week. There's 50 of you. We're going to stay at the Embassy Suites. Don't talk to anybody. You can't wear anything that says where you're from because they want the first time the cast to meet to be on camera. And there were 50 of us there. And so they're running you through, and it was weird. You're locked in your hotel room all day. They let you out to eat. And you're sitting in the restaurant of the hotel, and there's like one person at every table because you can't talk. But they put you in a room with everybody, and you take a personality test, you take intelligence tests, you're interviewing with psychologists, you didn't realize people. And as the week's going on, I'm noticing less and less people at the meals. They're sending people home. It's getting towards the end of the week, and they say, today's the day. You're going to meet with Burnett today. I'm like, all right. So I put on my best suit. They go, it's time, let's go. I walk upstairs. It was the Embassy Suites in Santa Monica. And there was these 2 double doors that opened up into like a conference type hotel room with big chair. Mark Burnett's sitting there with a bunch of NBC brass sitting behind him, camera rolling, and he's eating M&Ms. And I walk in, how you doing, Mr. Burnett? I stick my hand out. And he looks at my hand and puts an M&M in my hand. And then I proceed to launch into this, all of my accolades, which I was probably embellishing quite a bit at this time, about why I'd be the perfect candidate to be on your show. And one of the things about me is I have a high level of EQ. I know when I got you and I know when I'm losing you. And I had lost everybody. I mean, I knew this was going poorly. Walk out of the room, I go downstairs and I know what's coming. So I start packing my bags. I'm like, this is over. They're going to send me home. I'm done. That was terrible. And about 2 minutes later, a guy knocks on the door, one of the PAs, and says, they want to see you again. And I said, okay. Sized up what happened pretty quick. And I said, if I'm going back, I'm going on my own accord. So I said, I got to hit the mini bar. So I hit the mini bar, go back upstairs, get to those double doors. And I kicked him as hard as I could. Bam! Doors open, hit the walls. All the NBC people jump. Burnett, startled, looks at me. I walk into the room and I said, before you say one more word to me, buddy, about anything, let me tell you why you should cast me on your little television show. When you make an investment in me, you get back 100 times what you invest. And I pulled a bag of M&Ms that I'd taken out of the minibar. I threw them in his face. I said, thanks for the fucking M&M. And I walked out. And that's how I got on the show. Because here was the thing, right? Let's break that down into business tense on how that affects. So the first thing was the value proposition. I went in there assuming what they wanted was super high qualified. They wanted to read my resume. It was a walking resume when I walked in there. They weren't hiring, they were casting. So I created no value for them whatsoever in that first interview. It was a walking resume. So I'm like, I got to create some value. So I got to go from walking resume to dude that might do something crazy on camera and get us some ratings, right? Which is why I did that. Then I did the risk evaluation. What's the risk evaluation? Well, my downside is nothing because I'm already cooked. And the upside is one balls out crazy moment that might give me the best opportunity in my life, which is what happened.
I love it. I love bringing the M&Ms in the hundredth times return. Just classic. So talk to me about, like, you figured out how to achieve greatness and you've done so many incredible things. You know, I look up to you so much, as do many others, but walk me through someone who's stuck in mediocrity. Like what do they do?
Well, So somebody asked me earlier, they said, what's the difference between top performers in your business and average performers? And I think it's the same for any industry. It is clarity of plan and goal and consistency of execution. Those two things combined will always equal fantastic results. And so the first thing you've got to do if you're stuck is step one is radical honesty. If you can't be honest about where you are right now in life, if you don't know your starting point and you're not going to be honest with it, you can't start a journey. And then from there, you've got to decide what is the life you want. And you've got to describe that in crystal clear clarity. And we go so far as with my people is, it's one of the things I love ChatGPT for. Instead of the old vision boards where you cut the stupid jets out of, a magazine and stick them on a board, we create photorealistic, images of these of the lives they want with them in the photographs.
Yeah.
So here's exactly what you want where you're going. And then from there, you've got to be honest with what you're doing. You've got to figure out how you're going to get there, right? So you've got where I am, you've got clarity of goal, the life you want, then you got to find the vehicle to get there. If you are in a job that is underpaying you and there's no way to financially get there, you're going to have to pivot into something else. Now, I'm not saying do it all at once, but you may have to pick up a side gig. You might have to improve what you're doing, but you've got to reverse engineer that financial goal or whatever it is into daily activities that you can execute that will get you there. For example, real estate's really easy. Let's say your goal is to whatever. You want your kid to go to college and not have a bill. You need $100,000 to do that. So you got to figure out what your month of life costs you, how much it costs you to exist because you have to live. Figure out your taxes on top of that. That becomes your new zero. So everything we're talking about is generating income on top of that to pay for this goal. So now you look at what is the average price of a house you sell? How many appointments does it take to sell a house? How many calls do I have to make to get those appointments? And you reverse engineer it all the way back to a daily activity, which is picking up the phone. Because if an agent tells me, I want to pay $100,000 for my kid's education, have it paid off, that seems like most people look at that and they go, well, that's a pretty lofty goal. But if I can reverse engineer it back to, if you make 47 phone calls a day, that will happen because the KPIs and the math doesn't lie. I think most people just have to clear everything out to see a clear path to getting to what they want.
Okay. I love that. I love that. And if someone gets your book, my understanding is the way it's been done and the way I looked at it is you've kind of laid it out as a playbook. Like this is that person that's saying, hey, I want to make 200 grand. I need to make an additional 100 grand. They get your book. They're going to get those steps, the radical honesty, the clarity of goal, the month of life. It's laid out there. Do you want to like talk to our audience about that?
Yeah, like you just said, it is a playbook. It's not hyperbole. It's not a parable. It's stories from my life that actually happened because I tend to, thank God I've learned from my mistakes over the years. I'd like to say a lot of people in their offices have their accolades and their awards and the things they've gotten. My office is littered with, I'm a serial killer to my own finances, or have been in the past, where I keep trophies of failures because those are my lessons, because I don't want to repeat those failures in business. So I keep reminders. Like I have a $100,000 bottle of vitamins that sits right on my desk. But yes, it is in step-by-step everything you need to do, because I wanted it to be tactical. There's so much stuff out there that's fluff, that's just, hey, here's the same message kind of repackaged, but a different frequency. And maybe you resonate with my frequency more than you resonate with somebody else. So read this. It doesn't matter if you necessarily love me as a human or not. I wanted you to at least get tactical steps that you can execute.
Okay. So now you have woken up, you have kicked the door open at Apprentice, you have unleashed your potential. You've got these AI-driven vision boards. That's another thing I kind of liked a little bit, throw people in it. So walk me into Simply Vegas and what's your leadership style and what are you doing there? Tell us about that.
So after The Apprentice, I exited a tech firm that I was the CEO of, and I was kind of sitting in Tampa wondering what my next move was. And the one thing, I don't want to skip over this because it was really important. Okay. The biggest impact The Apprentice had on me was it was the first time I had ever been surrounded by a peer group that was absolutely killing it. And you are such a product of the people that you are around. And most people don't realize how impactful that is on you. But when I was around these people, I would venture to say a couple things. and yes, I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit, but I would say I was probably I would put myself in the top 5 smartest people on that season. But I'll also say I was probably in the bottom of net worth when I was there.
Yeah.
Probably had the least amount of money, but I was probably in the top 5. And I reconciled that pretty quickly. Like, what are you doing? Like, when you get around people that are just absolutely getting after it, if you've got anything in you that's gonna bootstrap yourself up, it inspires you to do that. And so that was like, okay, I got to do something different. And so many people were making money in real estate that when I got out of the tech firm, Kendra Todd, who had won my season, who's still one of my best friends, called me and said, hey, why don't you get a real estate license and come work with me? It'll be fun. And that started a 20-year journey. That is now, Simply Vegas has been open for 15 years. And we're number 2 in the marketplace here in Vegas. 1 out of every 18 homes that get sold here, sold by us. We sell more homes over $1 million than any other firm. And we're completely vertically integrated. Everything that happens that touches the real estate transaction we own, from title and mortgage to escrow to all of it. We own everything that can happen in that through vertical integration, which I'm a huge proponent of. But my management style and how that works is, at my heart, if I had to describe myself in one word that gives me passion and I love, is I'm a coach. I think when you're trying to bootstrap yourself up and you're moving, you get very focused on yourself. You get very introverted on your own efforts and your own success. But then when you get to a point where, man, the money's flowing in, this business is doing well, I got this, you start to realize that the accolades that you win for yourself are not nearly as fulfilling as watching others that you are bringing forward. As you're striving forward, reaching back to pull them with you, watching them succeed. And the greatest joy that I started seeing, especially through real estate, was not just people coming in and earning commissions, not people just going from like the most they ever made was 50 grand to now seeing them make 300 grand, 400 grand, whatever it was, but watching them start to turn those commissions into investments in real estate, which creates generational wealth. I've literally changed the generational trajectory of more families than I can count. And that gives me so much more joy than any house I've ever personally sold or any award I've ever been handed.
That's awesome. So, one thing you touched on without talking about it is, radical honesty, looking at yourself, your 27-year-old self, how you made it to the finals of Apprentice, but then got on it, is self-awareness, being like aware of who you are, how you represent yourself, how you make others feel. Kind of now saying where you get a lot of your juices, it isn't by your success, but by passing that success formula on to others. What role does self-awareness play in someone's leadership?
Well, I think if you're not self-aware, you're not authentic. And I think people would smell that on you. And I think if you're living any type of a masquerade, you cannot push forward to people. I'm telling you an example. I did not graduate from college. And for I got a PhD in my fraternity, but I did not graduate from college. And for years, I just let people believe that I had, right? Because at that time it was very important. And I just more convenient to let people believe that. And I let them believe that. So here I am, I'm on The Apprentice, and it's the first day. We walk into the boardroom and Trump goes, okay, everybody, we're doing something a little different this year. This year we're doing book smarts versus street smarts. Half of you have college degrees and half of you are high school people. And I remember sitting at the table going, oh my God, I'm about to get outed for this lie that I was so important to my identity and that I've been living for so long. I'm going to get outed on national television, right? Like, this is the biggest possible stage for me to have my ego get smashed. And I'll never forget, the show came out. It was at the time one of the highest rated shows in television with the most viewers. And you know how many people said something to me about that? Nobody.
Nobody.
Ever. No, not one person. Nobody cared. And I think that's so indicative of people that are stuck in their own head because they just assume that other people are thinking so much about them. And in reality, they're not at all, and it does not matter. Yep. So they're holding on to these false images of themselves, which in reality is holding you back from reaching your potential, because you got to let that stuff go.
Absolutely. Well, you just hit on a name that I wanted to hit back with you on. You talk about Donald Trump. So as an individual, you've been fired by Trump. You've been fired at a hotel manager in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
So, like, talk to me about resiliency and resilience and bouncing back. And, those are bookends, But
Yeah.
talk to me about that.
Well, resiliency is about framing. Because I think, again, as unimportant as it is what people think about you and what you think about yourself, in certain situations that are especially very public, and if you were talking about founders or CEOs, everybody's going to have a failure at some point. You're going to have a very public failure. It's going to happen. And it depends on how you frame it. If, like I said, with my wall of trophies of misfortune in my office, if you frame it as a lesson, I think people want to see you come back. Like, for example, if somebody says, "Oh, you got fired in The Apprentice," I'm like, I didn't get fired. I got real time national exposure on a television and a running PhD, or I'm sorry, a running MBA. Like, this is what I got in real time. That was not a negative for me. That was a super positive.
Absolutely.
And as long as you frame it in a way that it's a lesson, then I think that's what you have to do. It's either the opportunity to take a hit or an opportunity to publicly step forward. And as long as you're honest, you will.
Like I'm a big sports fan and a Patriots fan. So every once in a while I'll hear somebody dog the Bills and say, "Oh, you lost 4 Super Bowls in a row." And I sit there and go, they made 4 Super Bowls in a row. Like almost nobody makes 4 in a row. Granted, they didn't make them, wide left, but like just getting there. And so I think that's what you're saying is like, no, you didn't win The Apprentice, but like, look at what it did for you. Look at the launch pad, look at the experience it gave you. And, one of the things that I saw that you wrote, and I'm going to quote you here, you often say, break free, level up, live on purpose. So what does living on purpose look like day to day?
Again, living on purpose is you taking control and responsibility, the keyword being responsibility, for the trajectory of your life. I got a bad book review on this new book that just came out, and I love it. I absolutely love this bad book review, and I'm going to tell you what it is. It just came out. So there's a place, if you write books, called Publishers Weekly, that's like the reviewer for book buyers.
Yeah.
That they look at this. And my book came out, and there was some nice stuff in the review, but it said this. It said, "My advice occasionally comes across trite because I refuse to acknowledge the myriad systemic issues, and I present all problems as solvable."
Yep.
And when I read that, I was like, of course you hated my book if you believe that. I absolutely believe all problems are solvable, because I've been doing my podcast for 4 years, and I have heard stories of people that have unbelievable success that, according to the myriad systematic issues, have no business being anywhere near it. They got off boats from Vietnam and couldn't speak the language at 25, and now they're real estate moguls with 1,000 doors in one generation. They came to Florida from Cuba on a raft in the 80s. There are people that grew up in abject poverty in India, and now they're extremely successful. So where's the myriad of systematic problems that do that? So thank you very much to Publishers Weekly for, in my opinion, endorsing my book with that very statement. Thank you very much.
So you're an entrepreneur, but you also work with a lot of entrepreneurs. What's a common lie entrepreneurs tell themselves, or you have to shake them out of it? But because I think that happens, what do you see?
This is the same. It's always the same across the board when I go into consult or help people. They are too in love with their product.
Yeah.
They love their product. It's amazing. I made this product. It's got to be great. It's got to be the marketing that makes it bad. No. Did you find out if anybody wanted this before you made it? Like, did you beta test the market for it? No. And they're too in love with what they did, or they spent too much time on a plan that they designed to get where they want to go. And they refuse to let it go. For me, and I talk about it in my book, a good plan to solve anything, and I teach it, is 1 page. It is a 1-page plan that builds clarity, shows purpose, has action steps that get you in strategies that get you where you want to go. And if it's not working, you pivot. But I found those are my 2 things, is they're too in love with the work that they've done.
Now, so you have, so to kind of like just round out the picture for our listeners, you have a real estate business, you have your podcast, your writing, and you have other businesses. How do you blend all that? How do you do all that?
So one of the best lessons that I learned in being a multifaceted kind of company that we are is I used to try to hire industry specific people for companies. For example, when I needed leadership at my title company, I would go out and seek for available leadership in the title industry. I very quickly learned that a lot of times available talent isn't talent at all. It's available for a reason. And so what we started doing is really focusing on hiring the smartest people we could find, because you can teach a smart person to do anything. And when we made that pivot, my daily, I get a KPI sheet. I know exactly where we are. I get a daily update on all of our businesses. I can review it. If there's instead of what I used to get was, here's the problem, what should we do? I now get, here's the problem, here's what I'm going to do to fix it. What do you think? So it just makes it streamlined. It's all about the people you hire. If you're going to scale, you have got to scale with the right people.
Yeah. In my last book, I talked about in companies, and it was a book for going into a company and doing transformations and growing them, at hyper growth stages. And I actually talk about a third of your leadership team should absolutely come from outside the industry and just be the best talent you can find. So, don't go do a dumpster fire and let everyone on your leadership team go. You've got people there that have been serving the company well. You've got people from competitors that really, but bring in a third of your team from outside the industry that are just great leaders, great smart people, great thinkers, critical thinkers. And when you bring those together, I think you really find some innovative pathways to doing things that people in the industry aren't doing or overlooking or just aren't doing because that's not how it's done in the industry. Yeah. And I've personally had great luck with it. And I hope that, other people, and it sounds like you look for the greatest talent, not the greatest industry veteran, perhaps.
Always. And I have a standing understanding with everybody in leadership at my companies, and they understand this. My loyalty, as much as I love people and I love everybody, and you have to separate your loyalty as a human from people sometimes and really respect the performance of what they're doing. That has to be the metric that you're making decisions by, because your ultimate loyalty, whether you're publicly traded or you're just an independent company you own, has got to be to the business. And I have a standing kind of understanding with all of my people that my job as the owner of these businesses is to find the absolute best talent. Always be looking for the best talent to sit in these seats. Your job as the person in that seat is to make it impossible for me to replace you.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the job. That's it. Make yourself indispensable to this business. And they understand that going in. That's the expectation.
So, a couple questions. So times are going good. You got your business rocking. It's going well. How do you keep your team from drifting? The market's up, real estate's up, just everything's going well. How do you get them from like taking their foot off the gas and drifting? And what do you do to keep them focused?
Well, real estate, that's an easy answer. So the reason that most people in real estate as agents fail is because they put forth the same amount of effort regardless of what the market does. So the market is dictating their income. When the market's hot and the market's good, like 2021, 2022, they make a bunch of money. But in most cases, what happens is this. When the markets get hot, they lower their stuff because they're aiming at the income level. They say, I want to make $80,000 a year or $60,000 a year. That's what most agents make, right? They don't make big dollars. They say, I want to make $60,000 a year. So they're putting forth exactly as much effort to get to that 60 and they're stopping. Well, what we do is we base everything that we do here on ultimate financial goals that are high, and we adjust our effort with the market. Okay. So if you look at our KPIs for my team, they just understand that where 2 years ago, maybe you've got to make 800 calls into our CRM to hit your financial goals. Now that number is $1,600 a month because the market's harder. And I also think it's really important to instill in your people. I love something that Alex Hormozy said, which is when things get really hard, and right now real estate's hard, it's very difficult. When you get to that place where you don't want to make that next call and you just don't want to put the effort forth, this is the place where most people quit. Yeah. Like this is the point. And take pride in the fact that even though it might not be going your way, this is the place you're walking over the body on Everest right now. That's what you're doing.
So like walk me through when someone does have that setback. So, you've got a team member, they've got to go from 800 to 1,600. something's not working, and the system you've put in place, whatever, but somebody has a setback. Like, how do you overcome setbacks?
Well, so you got to figure out first what's going on with the person. I think we have a standard here at our company, which is rare in the real estate industry, where if you don't sell anything for 6 months, you can't stay with our company. We're not a body shop here. We don't just keep people around. And those conversations go one of two ways. They go, when we call people and like, hey, you're on the list for this month. You haven't sold anything in 6 months. What's going on? It's either, man, nothing I'm doing is working. I'm going like, I don't know what's going on. Nothing is working. I can't figure it out. It's terrible. I'm doing the best I can. If it's that, I got you. We're going to have a meeting. We're going to sit down. We're going to go through. We're going to look at what you're doing. We're going to see if you need to pivot. We're going to get you a new plan that you're excited about that you could execute. Because chances are they're just trying to beat the same old drum. They're just doing the same old thing that's always worked. And maybe the market has moved away from what's always worked. They have to try some new things that are working. The second half of that is somebody might say, well, I'm not really focused on it right now. I'm not really doing this. Well, you need to go. Because without focus, and they always use the word focus, I'm not focused on that right now. Without focus, you can't succeed.
Okay, so last question, and this is kind of a question that I want to ask so our readers know what to do. So, somebody picks up your book, Escaping the Drift, they read it. What's one action you think they should take when they read the last page and put the book down? What would be the first thing you'd say they should go off and do?
Make a plan.
Make a plan. One-page plan.
Make a one-page plan. Make a plan.
One-page plan.
Because everything else stems from that. Like I said before, what builds successful people in business is clarity of goals and consistency of execution. Those two things combined always, always, always will yield positive results.
Okay, so help us with where if you're inspiring people right now and they want to, learn from you, stay in touch with you, follow up with you, like where can they find you online, or just how can they follow you?
So Instagram, the John Gafford, on all my social handles is that. You can go to thejohngafford.com. You can go to escapingthedrift.com, which is the podcast website, but I'm not hard to find.
Okay. All right. You just heard from a coach. You heard from someone who's got his PhD on the college campus at his fraternity. I like that.
Yes.
Somebody who, kicked the doors open and got on Apprentice, and really turned that into being, a real estate mogul, a podcaster, an author, an inspiring person. And I think one of the things that I'm also taking away from this is, 3 steps: radical honesty, clarity of goal, take action. And if you can follow that, you can take control of your own life. You can take more responsibility for your life. You can escape the drift, escape mediocrity, and, kind of climb that mountain, whatever mountain that you have set out with your clarity of goal. So, John, thanks for being our fearless leader today. Some pretty awesome messages. And as you said, very digestible takeaway actions that our listeners can follow up after today. So thank you.
Brendan, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This has been The Fearless Experience with Brendan P. Keegan. If you want to learn to live and lead fearlessly, go to brendanpkeegan.com.